So now we have the third session, and we have Dr. S. Bala Murugan. He's an associate professor, Department of Pulmonology, and he is Shri Muthu Kumaran Medical College and Research Institute, Director and Principal Investigator of Respiratory and Diabetic Clinical Trial, Chest Research Institute in Chennai. Dr. Bala Murugan is going to talk about what I have ended with. I've ended with some of the herbs which contain zinc, some of the plants which contain zinc, and he will talk about that role of zinc in boosting the immunity during COVID era. We always been talking about, everybody has been talking about zinc and zinc, elemental zinc, how much dose or not, before, during, and after COVID, the role of zinc. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Bala Murugan.
Thank you for that nice introduction, sir. I am Dr. Balmurugan. I practice pulmonology for the past 19 years, and then currently I am an associate professor and head the Department of Pulmonary Medicine at Sri Muthukumar Medical College, Chennai, India. And I seriously thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my views on certain aspects, especially on zinc to boost the antiviral immunity amidst this COVID-19 pandemic. Before me going on to the talk per se, I don't think I will have to elaborate much about this particular slide. We all know COVID-19 viral disease caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is a member of the subgenus, the beta-cov lineage B of the family Coronaviridae. And this virus group is a large family of viruses causing disease, basically in animals as well as in humans also. And they usually cause respiratory infection that may range from common cold to more severe diseases like the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome or the severe acute respiratory syndrome, and the most recent COVID-19. In practical experience, we do see this. This disease ranges from a very mild infection or before that a pre-symptomatic or an asymptomatic phase, most of the patients, and then it moves on to a stage where they have mild symptoms with mild amount of cough, some coryza-like symptoms, and then as the immunity increases or the viral load increases, probably they go in for an ARDS-like sort of a picture, but they're predominantly mild and moderate patients. Okay, now do we have a proven treatment against this yet? The answer really appears to be a big no. Currently, there are no specific pharmacological strategies for effective prevention or treatment of this viral illness. Yes, we do have other molecules like the antivirals and then the biologicals, etc. But none of these medication strategies have a proven benefit in the management of COVID-19, as well as we do not have any specific vaccination against this. So what do we have then? Yes, this is the most thing I like to stress particularly, a healthy immune system. And then in unprecedented circumstances, a healthy immune system appears to be our secret in breaking against this disease. Now, this thing I keep on stressing. Now, if you see in the past 2 or 3 months, the number of deaths and who is going to have this particular mortality, predominantly those persons who have a low immunity. Like, for example, you have a person who's a diabetic who has an uncontrolled sugar levels. One, persons with immunosuppressive conditions like malignancies, and those patients who are taking medications in the form of immunosuppressants like steroids or any other immunosuppressive drugs towards that, or patients with medical conditions like a chronic renal failure or a cardiac failure. All these patients, basic thing is a suppressed immune system. Because of this, most of these patients ranging from mild to moderate, and then they develop a severe disease, then they go on for an ARDS-like picture, and then the mortality ensues. So the bottom line is, unless and otherwise we have a healthy immune system, fighting against this deadly disease is going to be a big fight and task against us. Now, nutrition. How does nutrition affect immunity? Both these things are interrelated. We talk about malnutrition. Malnutrition tends to increase the mortality as well as morbidity, not only against this particular viral disease, against any other infections for that matter. So increased risk of mortality and morbidity associated with malnutrition is tied to increased rate of infections and delayed recovery. A very typical example of this would be, say, diabetes mellitus. Higher the amount of sugar levels, lower the immunity. So these persons, they do catch a cold or a respiratory infection very frequently when compared to that of a person who does not have diabetes. I'm talking about an example, who does not have diabetes. The other person, if he develops or gets a respiratory infection once in 3 months, the person with an uncontrolled diabetes would be getting thrice in a month. Number one. Number two, those persons who have a normal immunity, they fight against the disease, and then the disease goes off with or without antibiotics, probably 5 to 7 days, whereas these patients with the high sugar levels, low immunity, would be fighting against the disease. The disease would go off probably up to 2 weeks of time. To add to the misery, the infections tend to increase the demand for several nutrients. Basically, a catabolic state ensues in these patients. And even the subclinical deficiencies of micronutrients could be potentially impairing the immune responses. So it is a cycle, and let us see how it affects each thing. Nutritional status and the disease prevention. Basically, nutrition is crucial in modulating the immune homeostasis. Now, optimal nutritional status is a very crucial event for protection against viral infections, or for that matter, any other infections. So bidirectional relationships among the diet, nutrition, and infection and immunity should be ensured. Now, once this chain is broken, there is a definite change in one of these components, probably affecting individually each and everything. Now, what is the host nutritional status as preventive action against COVID-19? Now, macronutrients, micronutrients, and phytonutrients promote healthy immune response. And these things provide antioxidants and anti-inflammatory nutrients which modulate the immune functions. A good example of this antioxidant I always would quote, say, for example, N-acetylcysteine. N-acetylcysteine, nowadays, even though being promoted as a pharmacological agent in the form of a drug per se, I would always consider N-acetylcysteine as a very good antioxidant, especially when you're talking about lung-related infections. So anti-inflammatory strategy can be done via foods, nutrients, or medications which seem to be viable for COVID-19 management. This is one very effective strategy. Now, most of our COVID-19 patients would be having a high plasma levels of interleukin-6 and TNF factor. Now, this interleukin-6 and this TNF are being primarily targeted as, say, markers of the cytokine storm we are talking about now. Normally, we take a cutoff of 20, less than 20 IL-6, that's fine. But when we talk about IL-6 elevation, more than 150, we take it as a strong component that the patient is having or about to have a cytokine storm. So high plasma levels of IL-6 and tumor necrosis factor. Number two, most of our COVID-19 patients, if not all, they will be having increased IL-17 producing T helper 17 cells and perforin and granulosin expressing cytotoxic T cells. The bottom line is more amount of cytotoxic T cells. The third thing is there is an increased plasma concentration of both the Th1 and the Th2 cytokines. Th1 cytokines, for example, IL-1 beta and the interferon gamma, and the Th2 things like, for example, IL-10 cytokines. And higher plasma concentrations of IL-2, IL-7, interleukin-10, the granulocyte colony stimulating factor, interferon gamma induced protein 10, shortly called as IP10, the macrophage chemoattractant protein, and the macrophage inflammatory protein 1 alpha. So all these things are elevated in those patients as the severity of COVID-19 increases. Okay, and of course the CD4 T cells and the CD8 T cells and the natural killer cells are definitely reduced, thus paving way for more amount of mortality in these subjects with a severe amount of COVID-19 infection. Now, how do we boost the immunity to fight COVID-19? Number one, antiviral immunity is very vital to recover from COVID-19 infection, one end. Then we have the micronutrient deficiency, suppressing the immune functions by affecting the T cell mediated immune response and adaptive antibody response, and others, the balanced host response is definitely compromised in these patients. On the other end, the supplementation with certain vitamins and trace elements definitely enhances the immunity in viral infection. infections. I keep on telling, not only in viral infections. Yes, of course, this part of the season definitely against viral infections, but not exclusively against viral infections, for that matter, against any other infection. Well, we talk about the zinc factor in antiviral immunity. Now, what does this cause? Zinc. Number one, it definitely plays a key role in the growth, development, and the maintenance of intact immune function, one way. Number two, the deficiency tied to increased susceptibility to infectious diseases per se, including viral infections. And it affects both innate and adaptive immune cells, zinc. Then it is very essential for the normal function and the development of cells regulating the non-specific immunity. That is also very specific, because we cannot be keeping on targeting only the specific immune system. The non-specific immune system should also be intact in these patients to fight against any diseases. So it definitely regulates non-specific immunity, including natural killer cells and neutrophils. And finally, zinc status is a critical factor that affects the immunity against the viral infections. So these are all the various roles played by zinc per se towards the antiviral immunity response. Zinc affects both innate and adaptive immune cells. These signals are essential for the NF kappa beta activation and the cytokine production. And the deficiency causes thymic atrophy. The zinc deficiency causes thymic atrophy, reduction of thymocytes, and then there is a decline or a decrease in the mature T cell counts. The third thing, deficiency of zinc leads to impaired NK cell function, natural killer cell function. And then the deficiency of zinc also depresses both T cell as well as the T cell dependent and independent functions. The deficiency of zinc adversely affects early beta cell development early B cell development. Deficiency linked with impaired PM function, polymorphonucleoside function, leading to decreased activity, decreased phagocytosis, and altered host defense. So that is very crucial as far as the neutrophils are concerned. So when we talk about zinc, it affects each and every cell which is involved in the immune regulatory system fighting against the disease. So when we have a deficiency of zinc, obviously all these things are compromised, paving way for infections, which leads on to mortality. So the bottom line is, once you have a proper amount of zinc in the body, which is either innate or to be supplied from external source, most of these deficiencies are compromised so that the patient or the host definitely fights against the disease. So zinc and antiviral immune signaling. Yes, zinc reduces the production of the type 1 IFNs, the interferons, and the interferon stimulated genes CD80 and 86 in response to TLR7 activation, number one. It inhibits IRF3 and 7 dependent production of interferon beta, and it stimulates the expression of the enzyme A20 to inhibit the pathogen response. It reduces IFN secretion by destabilizing the mRNA transcripts. So each and everything is very important in the regulation of the immune response, especially in relation to zinc. So zinc inhibits the IKK members of, like for example, alpha and beta, and then it increases the IFN alpha production by the leukocytes and inhibits the IFN3 signaling also. Okay, now the relation between zinc and respiratory tract infections. Low amount of zinc. This status is a definitely potential risk factor for pneumonia, especially in the elderly. And the incidence of low serum zinc in children with severe pneumonia has been estimated to as much as 80%. That's a big number. Low serum zinc levels are seen in children with pneumonia complicated by sepsis, especially more amount of infection, mechanical ventilation, and thus leading on to the mortality. And deficient serum zinc is being found at the onset of acute respiratory failure, especially the type 1 thing, with the lowest values in the septic shock. Low plasma levels of zinc has been associated with the likelihood of ventilator-induced injury in intensive care. So be it the mildest form of infection or the moderate or the severe one with sepsis or without sepsis, even the patient going in for a ventilatory failure rather than landing up in whatever be the ventilator, invasive ventilation, zinc plays a very, very, very vital and important role in managing these conditions. So there were several reports which point to the beneficial effects of zinc supplementation in respiratory tract infections. This particular paper, zinc supplementation promotes a Th1 response and improves clinical symptoms within a few hours in children with pneumonia lesser than 5 years of age. That was a randomized clinical control study. So that one specifically shows there was an increase in the cytokine response in Th1, that is IL-2 and IFN gamma, only in the zinc group, two randomized groups, one with zinc and one without zinc. So those pediatric patients who were put on the zinc group, definitely there was an increase in the cytokine response in Th1 pattern. That means interferon gamma as well as the interleukin 2. So zinc supplementation definitely improved certain clinical symptoms in children with pneumonia within a few hours and induced a definitely good cellular immune response. The next paper, randomized control trial of zinc supplementation in the treatment of acute respiratory tract infection in children from Thailand. Okay. Now, zinc supplementation was definitely well tolerated and there were no adverse events that were reported. The supplementation with zinc induced the number of days of the acute lower respiratory tract infection in children, as well as their stay in the hospital. So the duration of suffering because of the lower respiratory tract infection is definitely reduced in these children who are put on zinc, number one. And number two, the hospital stay was also shortened because of this zinc supplementation. So that definitely shows giving zinc, especially in pediatric population, definitely has very good potential benefits. So this paper, does zinc improve the symptoms of viral upper respiratory tract infection? Yes, the results in this systemic analysis confirm the efficiency of intake of at least 75 milligrams of zinc per day in reduction of pneumonia symptom duration, with the response being more pronounced in adults than children. So far we were talking about children, and then we were really satisfied about the papers which have been presented in pediatric population. Now, this paper shows much better than pediatric population. The adults are going to be benefited if they are being put on zinc supplementation. Yes, does zinc inhibit coronavirus? We have the answer. This particular paper says which inhibits coronavirus and then the arteryvirus RNA polymerase activity in vitro, and zinc ionophorosis block the replication of these viruses in cell culture. Yes, definitely zinc blocks the initiation step. Actually, it inhibits and has its action right from the start of entry up to the last level also in inhibiting the coronavirus, be it the RNA synthesis, as in case of the COVID virus. In all the things, all the elongation is inhibited and then the template binding is also reduced. I think zinc plays a very good role in inhibiting all the steps of this virus replication inside the body. So the zinc modulates the viral particle entry, the fusion of the virus with the cells, the replication of the virus, and then the viral protein translation. So everything is being affected by zinc. That itself shows that zinc is very vital in managing viral infection, especially in this era, the COVID-19 infections. So zinc may inhibit the viral replication by altering the proteolytic processing of the replicase polyproteins and RNA-dependent RNA polymerase enzyme in the rhinoviruses, HCV, and influenza virus. So it may diminish RNA synthesizing activity of the nidoviruses to which SARS-CoV-2 belongs to. SARS-CoV RNA polymerase activity by decreasing its replication. It inhibits the NF-kappa beta signaling and modulates regulatory T cell functions that may limit the cytokine storm, especially when the IL-6 levels are more than 150. It decreases the activity of ACE2, that is the receptor for SARS-CoV-2 getting attached to the cells. And zinc also increases the intracellular concentration by chloroquine, which may mediate an antiviral effect against SARS-CoV-2. And finally, improved zinc status potentially reduces the risk of bacterial co-infection, improves the mucociliary clearance and the barrier function of the epithelium, which is very, very, very vital. Actually, whenever any virus enters into the body, the first thing to be compromised is this altered barrier function of the respiratory epithelium. That's why it starts with chorea. That is a decrease in the ciliary beating frequency, and then the function of cilia is decreased. So starting from that, everything is being restored by zinc. So zinc and inflammation, zinc has all the anti-inflammatory effects in pneumonia, thus limiting the tissue damage and the systemic effects. Pre-treatment with zinc definitely reduces the LPS-induced pulmonary endothelial cell damage and also increases the cell viability in vitro and improves the respiratory function. So zinc pre-treatment decreases LPS neutrophil recruitment to the lungs, thus reducing the acute lung injury. This is basically the cytokine storm we are talking about. More amount of neutrophils, more amount of tissue damage because of the enzyme release. So that is being prevented by zinc pre-treatment. So anti-inflammatory effects of zinc in lung tissue seem to be mediated by the inhibition of NF-kappa beta signaling through the pKa-induced inhibition of the AF1 and then the kinase B or the A20 dependent inhibition as we are talking about initially, as well as zinc-induced modulation of the T cell activity, Th1 cell specifically. So back here in this part of the world, our government backs zinc supplementation as a measure to fight COVID-19. We do give this zinc supplementation to almost all the patients, be it mild, asymptomatic, or pre-symptomatic, mild patients, moderate patients, or severe patients. We do give zinc on routine supplementation along with vitamin tablets, in addition to the routine other medications what the patients are expected to take. So to summarize, currently, the treatment of COVID-19 involves only supportive therapy, number one. Zinc possesses direct and indirect antiviral properties. We had seen through that. Supplementation with zinc can enhance the antiviral immunity, both innate as well as humoral. It restores the depleted immune cell function or enhances the normal immune cell function. Zinc may act synergistically when co-administered with standard antiviral therapy. We are not saying that only zinc should be administered. Yes, zinc plays a vital role. So it can be co-administered with the other antiviral medications what the patients are deserved to get. Zinc is being considered as a potential adjuvant therapy in the treatment of COVID-19 on account of its immunomodulatory and antiviral effects. So the experts recommend zinc supplementation with other vitamin supplementation for the management of COVID-19 disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bala Murugan. And it was a wonderful talk emphasizing the need of zinc. And now it has become like a routine that vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc has to be taken for prevention, for treatment, and a post-COVID phase which carries inflammation. So now we know in COVID there are two phases. The first 9 days is the viral phase, and subsequent couple of months are the post-COVID phase. Post-COVID phase is the inflammatory phase. So you require an antiviral activity of a drug during the first 9 days. Before 0 days, you need prevention. And then you need an antiviral activity. And after 9 days, you need a prolonged anti-inflammatory action. And zinc plays all three roles. It prevents, it reduces, it has an antiviral activity. And post 9 days, it helps you in anti-inflammatory activity. There are some questions which have come. Let's take a few of them. What are the dose of zinc for prevention and treatment? They're talking about the dose of, again, just repeat it again, dose for prevention and dose for treatment and dose for anti-inflammatory. Yes, Dr. Bala.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We start giving 75 milligrams, which works very good in the prevention as well as the treatment. But as the severity increases, we go up to 150 milligrams also. That seems to be a better dose, 150 milligrams.
So he says any dose differences in pediatrics, adults, and geriatrics?
Well, we have not seen any specific reduction in the dose for the pediatric population. The 75 works very well with the pediatric population also without any demonstrable adverse events on those patients.
I have not suffered from COVID. Should I take the same dose for prevention?
Yes, sir. 75 milligrams, even before getting the infection, that is what we follow in a hospital also. 75 milligrams per day of zinc definitely works, even if the patient is not having any disease per se. Pre-symptomatic stage also it works.
So zinc is not stored in the human body. Then he says, is zinc stored in the human body? Can I cumulatively accumulate zinc in the body?
Well, sir, so far, practically speaking, we have not any experience of cumulative doses causing zinc toxicity per se. So I don't think that should be a problem, getting the storage of zinc in hyper. It is being known to have, whenever there is more amount of zinc being taken for at least 6 months and beyond that, but we are going to give for a short period of time. So I don't think that should be a problem, sir.
Any dose effect in diabetics? Same zinc dose, higher dose, or no dose?
75 milligrams seems to be the best possible dose for those patients.
So 75 milligram of elemental zinc?
Yes, sir.
So 75 milligram of elemental zinc should be taken by everybody. Yes, this was a wonderful presentation by Dr. Bala Murugan.
Thank you,
And
sir.
this video was live on MedTalks. You can go back to medtalk.in and watch this again and again. This was also live on YouTube. And the link of this will also be sent to various doctors in the country so that they can watch it again and again. So I thank on behalf of the organizers and myself, I thank Dr. Bala to be here for giving a wonderful talk on zinc. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir.